Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Inside the Investigation. Andy Fox here. We are continuing our discussion on the investigation unfolds. Joining me from Isle of Wight County Sheriff's Office, Captain Tommy Potter over here, and also Sergeant Grayson Craun. Sergeant, let me start with you. Talk to me about the investigation and the importance of the evidence that you are collecting. The collection of physical evidence.
Okay. I'll start with the importance of the timeliness of the collection of that evidence. Evidence, especially biological, physical evidence, degrades over time. So we have to secure a scene, get search warrants so that we can then collect that evidence and process it as quickly as we can. So that process has to move very quickly, very efficiently. And then we have all the resources in place to properly collect hair, blood, DNA, any physical evidence left on the scene. Could it be a firearm? Could it be an actual body that has to be collected? So all of that has to be done in a timely manner to ensure the best outcome.
And some of that evidence can be gathered in an interrogation. And Captain Tommy Potter is here. And you all are about to see this interrogation that the captain conducted. Tell me about what we're about to see.
So again, this is another video clip of an interrogation we did concerning a double homicide that we had in the county. And again, when you're in that room, you're talking to that individual, you and in this case, there's a second detective in there. You are gathering as much information as you can from that individual to try to drive the investigation. It may be he or she may tell you of something that, okay, now we have to go get a secondary search warrant. They may tell you, okay, where a firearm is located, where they discarded a piece of evidence. And so the interview and interrogation, again, is to try to get as much information as you can out of that person sitting across the table from you.
Okay, let's take a look at the interrogation.
Okay.
See, Isle of Wight County Sheriffs, they all tie computers now. It all tells us the very minute you call it, it shows up. And we can search it. That fool took that Apple computer to the pawn shop in Hampton and pawned it. We got it, went up there, ended up arresting him. Ms. Phillips says, I want a jury trial. A jury for stealing a computer and a man's ashes. That fool got 24 years for kicking in the door. Now, what do you think you're going to get when I tell him, pow, not once, but he'll testify that you shot him between the man and the old lady 8 times. And at the end of the day, all Richard had to sit there and say, I don't know what you're talking about. Now it's time to tell your side of the story, Richard. If you want to kill her, okay, I get it. But you were in that house. So you better tell me, now's your chance to tell me your side of the events. Because I don't think you're a bad guy. I know you're not the ringleader. I can look at you and tell that. But you got yourself tied up in something. And right now, whatever you got yourself tied up in is dragging you down, way down.
Okay, what I picked up from that, I know you aren't the ringleader. Mm-hmm. You're letting him know that other people are talking. Now's your time to talk, to tell me what happened, to make it easier for you.
Yeah, so in that video clip, first, honestly, you're trying to scare him, right? I told him about someone that stole a computer and got 24 years. Did he get 24 years? I have no idea. But you're making stuff up because I'm trying to elicit a response from him. And then at one point, again, in that interrogation, you're shifting gears, trying to minimize. I mean, he's there. We know that he was there. We know he was in the house. We know he was probably pulled the trigger. But you're trying to minimize his involvement to say, just tell me something. You're not a bad guy, right? Things just happened. You're in the wrong place at the wrong time, right? Just tell me what happened, right? It's not that serious, right? But if I have to go and you're trying to say, hey, in Isle of Wight County, juries hand out harsh sentences. A guy got 24 years for stealing a computer. I don't know the case. Again, there's nothing that says in an interview and interrogation,
okay to do that?
You can. So the Supreme Court has ruled that in an interview and interrogation, you can lie. You're not always telling from the detective side or the investigator side. You're not always being upfront and honest. You're not always telling the 100% truth because it's assumed that when I'm talking to someone, they're lying to me so that I can lie to them, right? And so, again, it's all about trying to break down the barriers and get that individual to talk. Once they start talking, then they're more apt to tell you the truth.
We're going to see another clip of that in the third segment, and then you'll tell us what eventually happened to Richard, right?
Right, Richard.
Okay, now, Sergeant, what do you want to add to what Captain said?
One thing I would add is one thing that you don't see when you look at that video is there's a team of investigators behind the scenes listening, collecting that information, and also relaying and verifying information that the interrogator is actually collecting. So if a suspect is giving information, you might have a team of investigators behind the scene corroborating or saying that is not true. So then that can be relayed back to the interrogator so that they can leverage that to get the right outcome.
Okay, so they're out there and they're checking their notes. Oh,
They
that's
are.
lie. That's
They're-
lie.
they're-
That's lie. Do
they're-
you have like an earpiece where they say, "Hey, Captain, that is a lie. That is not what happened."
No, but you take strategic breaks, or they may, to be able to talk to them, they may send you a quick text message. You notice in that last clip we saw the secondary investigator is not in the room at that time, so they may conveniently step out to confer with the investigative team because, again, they're back in the office. They're working the phones. They're calling maybe patrol deputies that first got there that says, "Hey, my guy in the interview told me this. Did you see that when you got there?" So again, they're trying to back up anything you learn.
They're always recorded. I know that. Do you always have two people in the room?
Usually you try.
Good cop, bad cop?
You may go that route. But again, the person in that clip, I'm talking to Richard. You have to think quick on your feet. That secondary investigator is in there. He's taking notes about what Richard's saying, with questions that I'm asking, things that he may be formulating questions because at some point I may take a break and let them ask some questions. I may be very confrontational. He may be very understanding. So you have to think quick.
Sergeant, talk to me about the cat and mouse. The cat and mouse of what's going on. What does that mean, and how does that play into this?
Sure. The cat and mouse just goes down to the game that's being played with someone that you know has information that they're not giving you, or you know that they know more than they're telling you. And you have to, like Captain was saying, you have to draw that out. And the cat and mouse game is taking pieces of information that they give you, letting your team assist you in finding out whether that is true or not true, leveraging that untruth into creating more of a pressure on that suspect. But additionally, finding things that are to be true and using that as motivation that they're doing the right thing, that they're on the right track, so that you can further that interrogation.
And all of this leads to the collection of physical evidence. So coming up in our next segment, we'll talk about that. And we will also see video at crime scenes and allow them to narrate exactly what we're looking at as the investigation unfolds. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. The investigation unfolds. Isle of Wight County Captain and Tommy Potter and Sergeant Grayson Craun, thank you very much for being here. Sergeant, let me go straight to you. Collection of physical evidence. All of what we're talking about in the investigation leads ultimately to the collection of physical evidence and how important that is.
Right. So back to an initial crime scene, patrol responds. They're going to observe, they're going to secure the scene, and we're going to have physical evidence on scene. And that could range anywhere from DNA, blood, hair, weapons, a body, vehicles, the house itself. All of that stuff is contained, secured. And we talked about the search warrant process and then getting in and collecting that evidence. The importance of getting it quickly is because it degrades over time. And also to be able to analyze that evidence quickly leads to further evidence that's collected down the road. So getting in there, getting it quickly is crucial.
And so I think one of the things when we talk about collection of physical evidence, yes, we want to collect it, but during the course of that investigation, there will be investigators that are their sole job is to notate where the evidence was collected from. And so we'll either do like an old-fashioned crime scene.
Show that to
So
everyone.
we may do like an old-fashioned crime scene sketch, right? And so this was one we did several years ago. Now there's actual cameras that make 3D images of rooms and things, and then we'll collect evidence, and then we'll work with the Department of Forensic Science here in Norfolk, and we'll send this stuff to the lab. And so we may collect 100 pieces of evidence.
And this is the evidence, a certificate
some
of
of that,
analysis
and so
to
we'll
tell you
work-
is a legit not.
It is, right? So we'll work with the lab to say, hey, we collected 100 pieces of evidence, but let's narrow it down to the most crucial pieces that we think will forward the investigation, whether it's DNA, whether it's weapons, whether it's hair, and then we'll send that to the lab. The lab will do their analysis on it and send back a report. to say, hey, the evidence that you collected could be tied to an individual. It may be a DNA profile that's developed off a blood sample or a swab. They may tell us, hey, the firearm you collected was not only used in your crime, but maybe was used in other crimes. And so we'll gather a lot. And so that lead investigator will have, it's very important that they have open dialogue with the lab as well.
And this talks about a lot of stained swabs from rear seat of Honda, stained swab from left loafer.
Right. So these were
Left
all
loafer.
So we'll look at anything. So we developed in that case, we developed a suspect, and we, in developing a timeline, knew different places that he went right after that murder was committed. And so we went back and talked to people and said, when you saw this individual here, what was he wearing? And so we were able to get a clothing description. And so when we did a search warrant, we knew the shoes that he had on. We knew the shirt that he had on. So that we went back then and collected that evidence and then began to look for blood droplets and blood spatter and things that were present on the clothes. And then those were swabbed and sent to the lab to try to tie him to the homicide.
All right, we're going to roll some video. I want you to give me a play-by-play on what's going on here. Look at all the people involved. This is Isle of Wight County. I mean,
Yeah, again, a crime scene is controlled chaos sometimes. And so you're gathering your resources, you're trying to figure out the personnel that you need, you're trying to figure out the different who's going to be responsible for what. So you're conferring with your investigative team. A lot of times we talked about before, you're giving information to your PIO. You're actually also talking to, your command staff because additional resources and funds may be needed to dig deeper into the investigation. And so there are a lot of moving parts in any investigation. And sometimes these investigations, go into, we've worked cases where we've worked 13, 14, 15 hours straight before taking a break. And it depends. Are you in a rural setting? Are you in an urban setting? Every law enforcement agency is faced with something different. And that last clip we saw, we asked for the dive team to come because we found a body in a piece of water. So every law enforcement agency is faced with different challenges of investigations.
and you're up all night long.
All day and night.
Lot of sleepless nights.
There is a lot of sleepless
You've
nights.
got to be prepared to burn the midnight oil because, again, like we were talking about with evidence degrading over time, witness statements degrading over time, the clarity of their recollection, all of that stuff degrades over time. So getting in there and investing, they say the first 48, if you will, getting in there and putting in the time to collect as much information as you can in that short period of time is crucial.
The first 48 hours.
Yeah. And so it's also important for that investigators don't get tunnel vision, right? And so a lot of times in the course of investigation, we're thinking we just got to make an arrest. We got to get to an arrest. That's only part of the investigation because the investigation doesn't stop when you make an arrest. The investigation stops when you get a conviction in court. And so an investigator's job is twofold. You want to get to where you can develop probable cause to make an arrest in a crime, but then you also want to make sure that your case is as solid as it can get, that when you hand it over to the Commonwealth's attorney, when you give it to that prosecutor, that they're prepared to take that case in front of a judge or a jury.
From both of you, the jubilation you get from a conviction on a case you've worked really hard on. Tell me.
We don't do this job for the money, right? We do it to bring closure to families. We do it to bring closure to victims of crime. And so when we're present in the court and a judge or a jury hands down a sentence, it's for us is a way of saying job well done.
Sergeant.
Yeah, I'll say one thing I like to hear more than the verdict or the outcome, the positive, is the thank you from the family. God forbid I'm in a situation like that, but to see that come to fruition and the outcome be a positive, to get that thank you from the family, it's.
And you were telling the story about the Starnes family, the family that you came in and talked about.
Yeah, so I mean, even good things. I'll give you an example of the Starnes family. It's a tragic event, double homicide. The mother, her elderly son. But what came out of that was the grandson, right, was so impressed of what first responders did that he left the job that he had and went back to school and became a paramedic, became a firefighter, and now works for Isle of Wight County as a paid firefighter and paramedic. And he will tell you that his passion to help people stem from the tragedy that his family endured in that double homicide.
Right. You also mentioned that they saw you last time on our podcast,
Well, that
and
was
they gave you
that was
a
the
thank you.
that
I mean,
was-
you're
yeah,
still
that was
talking
the,
about
that was the Anderson
case.
family. That was the Anderson family, and that's a cold case, or a dormant case. I really don't like to use the phrase cold case, but it's a dormant case in our office. And we do the interaction that you have with families. During the course of an investigation is important because they're dealing with a lot of emotions. They're dealing with a tragedy, sometimes a life taken way too soon, right? In tragic fashion. So to be able to carry on dialogue with the families during the investigation and even after the investigation is over with is important.
Okay, we are going to go back in the interrogation room. Coming up in our next segment, the investigation unfolds, and you'll see it coming up next. Inside the investigation, welcome back. The investigation unfolds, speaking with the Isle of Wight County Captain Tommy Potter and also Sergeant Grayson Craun. Now, let's go to this interrogation.
Okay.
Fill us in. What's going on?
So again, this is a double homicide that we had in Isle of Wight County. We identified 2 individuals as suspects, and so I think the clip you're going to see is another clip of having a young man named Richard in the interview and interrogation room, and so we are just having some conversation and confronting him with some issues.
Okay, let's take a look.
What we do is make it right from this point forward, okay? Right about that, so. I didn't get those people. Well, let me get you some water. Tell you something. Go ahead. At one point in time, I knew that they had that ball, but I didn't do anything over there. I didn't. I never would have. I couldn't use you force and I got everybody. You had everything. But I know you were in that house. I went there. I won't lie to you. I went. Who was with you when you went there? Richard was with you. I said, you know who was with me. Richard was with me. It was more than just that because it wasn't our move. You and Richard are the only ones walking down the street? Yeah. It wasn't really our move for real, to tell the truth, and I'll be honest about that. So it wasn't the reason we didn't.
Okay, so you're talking about Richard.
Right. So this is the other individual, Hakeem, that was involved in this
That's
homicide.
Hakeem.
That was Hakeem.
Okay.
And so at some point, in an interview and interrogations, you can be loud, you can be confrontational, you can be accusatory. Sometimes it's just
Whispering.
you be quiet.
Quiet.
Right. And sometimes with this
Tommy
Hakeem
Potter was quiet.
was quiet for a change, right? You shift gears. You change the mood to a little bit more relaxing because Hakeem is starting to talk, right? Hakeem is starting to tell me what happened there. And so I want to be quiet and I want to let him do the talking.
Now, what eventually happens with this?
So we eventually determined that Hakeem and Richard were committing some residential burglaries in Isle of Wight County. They went into this home. They actually knew this elderly couple. They had a relationship with them. They went in the early morning hours to rob or to burglarize their home. They were confronted by them, and they ended up killing the elderly man and killing his mother there in the house. Those two both were convicted of these double homicides, and they're now serving time in the Virginia State Penitentiary.
Okay, good work.
Excellent work by our team of investigators, as always. They do outstanding work.
Let's talk about Crime Line, Sergeant. What is the importance of Crime Line?
The importance of Crime Line is having the community involved with this process. You're not going to win without it. You can't do it alone. So the importance of Crime Line and having the community engage and use that can be the absolute turning point for an investigation. The beauty of it is the anonymous nature of it, but the buy-in to that program is absolutely crucial as it relates to investigators. It's another tool that we rely on to follow leads.
So we have a very robust crime line program here in Hampton Roads. And so all the cities here on the south side and the peninsula, we all participate in the Greater Hampton Roads Regional Crime Line. I'm sure you've heard of the number 1-888-LOCK-YOU-UP. So people can call and speak with investigators, or they can call and give information. We have a new program that we launched here several years ago with the P3 Tips app. We see that probably 80% of the tips that we get through the Crime Line program here in Hampton Roads come through P3 Tips, and that allows you from the beauty of your cell phone or from your computer to carry on a two-way dialogue with investigators. You can submit pictures, you can submit videos, you can submit audio clips, all through the P3 Tips app, and you remain strictly confidential. When you submit something on P3, we don't see your phone number, we don't see your name. You're given a random computer-generated number.
And someone's standing by to take
So-
your information, or is it all just recorded somewhere?
No, so
and
if you call 188 Lock You Up, you're going to get a telephone prompt that may say press 1 for Virginia Beach, press 11 for Isle of Wight. And when you press that number, you're going to be connected with a live, either an operator or an actual detective, an investigator who's going to take your information. They'll never ask your name. They'll never ask identifying information. If you submit it on P3, it's in Isle of Wight's case, as soon as you submit something and you send it to Isle of Wight County, it comes on my phone. I get an alert that we have a tip, and then we're able to go in there and look at that. And it's important that, their crime line is protected by the Code of Virginia. You remain anonymous, and you get a cash reward if your information leads to an arrest and a conviction.
Okay. Thank you guys so much for coming in. This has been
Thank you for having us.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to end with about the crime line? Call. You got to
Call.
get involved. We're all in this together.
We are. People are reluctant to reach out to law enforcement, and I understand that. But Crime Line is the great conduit to give information, to help, to be involved in investigations. It goes back. If you see something, say something. If you know something, say something. You never know what little bit of information you have. It might be the lead that cracks a case or leads to bringing closure for a family or a victim of crime.
Captain Tommy Potter and Sergeant Grayson Craun. Give me the last word. 30 seconds.
As it relates to Crime Line, we follow up on any information that is sent through the Crime Line. So please don't think that anything that you report isn't followed up on and it's a dead end. It's looked into.
Guys, thanks a lot for coming in. That's this edition of Inside the Investigation. The investigation unfolds. I hope that you have a greater appreciation of what goes on behind the scenes with law enforcement when they're trying to crack these cases. It's really tough business. It's tough to do, and we're lucky to have them here to do it. That's the last word here. We'll see you on the next podcast, Inside the Investigation.